Josh Dix, gone. Pryce Sandfort, gone. Iowa needs players. What's happening in the portal? We got names for you today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit subscribe. Just takes a moment and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Glad to have you aboard with us here as we kick off a new week. Locked On Hawkeyes, back at it after a weekend, in fact, in Iowa City. I made the trip over to the east side of the state and took in a little Iowa softball. Took my daughter to her first ever softball game before she played in a softball tournament up in North Liberty. So we're able to cross that one off the bucket list. Had some conversations with some people over there. Good time overall. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. What happened on the diamond in the Hawkeye world. We'll also talk a little bit about the Iowa baseball team and the softball team. Spring sports going on. Football is underway. We got a lot to get into. Plus, we will be joined by Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. We will talk with Doc about the comings and goings, get into some weeds a little bit deeper of how things are going to shake out and how things are going to look going forward. And as we come to you on the heels of the national championship game in women's basketball, just one more look back at Caitlin Clark and just absolutely how incredible it was these last 2 years. But we kick off today on the men's side of things, and we open with the transfer portal. It is always a conversation piece, this new era of college athletics, and what it'll be going forward. Who knows what it's going to look like? But what we know for the here and now, that money is currency. And it's crazy in college athletics that it's as simple as that, because we know the chicanery that was part of college athletics and the under the table payments and the like that were happening. Not the case anymore. You have money, you have power. You have a chance to build a pretty good resume in basketball. So we find out late last week that Josh Dix is making the decision to move closer to home. He's going to go and play with Greg McDermott's program at Creighton. Hop, skip, and a jump away from where he grew up, where his family is in Council Bluffs. So makes a ton of sense. Heard a year ago that this was something that was happening, that there was conversations at least being had. What those conversations are, is it assistant coaches? Is it AU coaches? Whatever it is, this is, again, our new reality. And I had somebody that believed that he was going to be departing a year ago. It didn't happen, obviously, as we see him complete his junior season. But he's going there. He's going to get a bag, and he's a good player. Imagining what a backcourt a Bennett Sturts and Josh Dix could have been, not just offensively, but defensively, was exciting to think about. It's not going to happen. And then you have Pryce Sandfort. It's one thing for Josh Dix to go close to home. He's got a mom that's been sick. You can wrap your mind around that one. Pryce Sandfort. All right. You grew up loving Fred Hoiberg. All right. How you can wear the black and gold and do that, I don't know. But anyway, to go to Nebraska, there's going to be some different feelings about that one. But they're gone. So now we turn our attention to what is next, right? What is Iowa after? So you start with, I think, the two simplest parts of the equation for this team. Ben McCollum needs to go out and needs to get a center. Cam Manuel is a guy that can play inside, and I believe can play power forward at a pretty effective level in the Big Ten. However, he's not a center. You can play 6'8", 6'9" guys at center in the Missouri Valley and get away with it. You can't in the Big Ten. Not over the grind of a 20-game conference season. Unless you have a whole lot of depth there and a whole lot of other pieces that you can go, you just can't get away with it. Plus, with his skill set, I think he's just better made in the Big Ten to be a 4. Look at the other transfer targets that they brought in. Outside of Sturts, this is not a great shooting group that has come in. Cooper Koch, I think we all believe, is going to be able to be a shooter and is going to be a guy that's going to, I think, continue to grow and build. And he's going to look back at his decision to stay and be the one out of the group that McCollum wanted back to stay in Iowa City. And I believe he'll be rewarded for that. Not financially, he willed away. But more importantly, he's going to be a guy that's going to be remembered very well. Because I do believe that it's going to work with Ben McCollum in a way that I didn't believe it was going to work with Todd Lickliter. I think that they got the right guy. And of all the candidates, all the realistic targets, I still believe, and it took some convincing for me to get there, but Ben McCollum was the perfect guy for this job. With the resources that they have, his understanding, and how to go about it. So let's get into these names and talk about some of the guys. So, all right, need a big, need a center, and you need shooting. You need more shooting in order to make that happen. And two of the guys right at the top of the list that make a ton of sense as it pertains to shooting are Honor Huff. He's 5'10". So we've continued to hear, and Ben McCollum's talked about it. And again, coming up later in the week, we'll be able to hear right here on Locked On Hawkeyes from Coach McCollum. But Coach has mentioned, he goes back to a couple years ago at Northwest Missouri State, where he had 5 guys that were shooting over 40% from 3. Well, Huff can fill it up. This dude's one of the more prolific three-point shooters in all of college basketball. At UT Chattanooga, that went all the way to the finals of the NIT. He's 5'10". 5'10" is not an end-all, be-all. He's incredibly quick, though. This is not 5'10" to be 5'10". That different kind of look than maybe you would think about. I really like Huff. Thinking of him in the backcourt together with Sturtz at 6'4", you can get away with that. Starter, off the bench, whatever it is. You have those guys kind of both playing that combo guard position, both running the point. It could work, even at 5'10" in the Big Ten, because of the athleticism that he has, the quickness that he has. Another name of a shooter is Tate Sage. Now, this is a guy, 6'7", 2-guard. It was a Drake commit. You look at him, he's not going to wow you athletically, but a tremendous shooter, a smart defender, and a guy that you can understand where he fits. A lot of people believe this is a foregone conclusion, that it's going to happen, that I was going to get a commitment coming up here pretty quickly from Tate Sage. The other guy that was committed out of the next year's recruiting class for Drake is an Estonian that came in and was down at Sunrise Academy. Remember Gable Shaney, that's where he came from. This guy's name, Sim Martin Sadi. 6'9", power forward, mid-major type prospect. Had mid-major offers, but good ones. Drake, Bradley, two of the best teams, if not the best 2 teams in the Missouri Valley. Still watching him, and again, we're going on highlight reels, right? Still looks like a mid-major player. Maybe can develop to be a program player, but that's the direction that they think can go. So those are the guys that come in that had offers from McCollum and committed to him, and obviously the background makes sense. A couple other names for you. When you go back to the Missouri Valley, Evansville leading scorer from this past year, Tayshawn Comer, averaged 16 points, 4 rebounds. That sounds pretty good. And then you look at the efficiency it took to get there. That's not very good. Now, he did it on a bad Evansville team because there's seemingly always a bad Evansville team. However, Comer was the best player for the Purple Aces this past season. Guy that has some skill, some versatility. He's got to shoot it a whole lot better, though, to play in the new Iowa system. Another guard prospect is Wes Enos, who is a Division II kid out of Lincoln University. There's a couple other D2 kids that Iowa's been involved with because of McCollum's background and certainly the coaches that he knows there. Finally, 2 more big guys. Duke Brennan, the big out of Grand Canyon, started his career at Arizona State. That would be the one that I think you would circle probably the most when you're talking about a center prospect. He's not going to be a guy that's going to come in and average 15 a game, but he can come in, bang around, big body, and you think of him playing with some of the guys that they have. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And another name to throw out there, and this came up right away when McCollum took the job, is Trevin Urach. He was Mr. Basketball here in the state of Iowa this past year, helped lead Valley to their 3rd consecutive state championship. Watched him a ton. Over the last 3 years, I've probably broadcast 20 of Trevin's games. So see him a ton. Limited athletically, tremendous skill set, led Valley this year in assists as a 6'9" guy. He's got to get more athletics, got to get that quickness. He went through a huge growth spurt back in middle school. His older brother, Drew, tremendous football and basketball player, but he was like 6'2", 6'3". Trev's 6'9". And you see kind of that body maybe seem to try to catch up a little bit athletically. No commitment, nothing like that, but that has been something that has at least been rumored recently with Trevor Urach possibly becoming a Hawkeye. He is committed to UNI. Have to get out of that, but we know how that works in today's environment. So those some names for you as we go down the path of taking a look around what is out there in the portal. This is a dead period. Iowa can still have contact with these recruits. Iowa can still be talking with these players. They just can't have them on a visit until it gets to the end of the week. So this is going to be that time where they're going to be setting up a lot. A lot of these guys are then going to be making visits starting coming up this weekend, the weekend of the 11th, and going from there as things will ramp back up in the portal. We got you covered each and every day on Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We're going to talk with Scott Dochterman. We got football, we got basketball, and we got just the athletic department as a whole. We'll do it with Doc as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All you need to get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic joining us as we take a look at some Hawkeye sports as a whole. Doc, I want to start with you talking women's basketball and just to look back after the heels of the national championship game, what we saw South Carolina, UConn, and the domination out of UConn. It takes my mind in a different direction.
I think it opens up our eyes even more of what Caitlin was taking those teams that didn't have a bunch of McDonald's All-Americans to back-to-back national title games, playing as long as you possibly can, get into that final tilt, and just showing that those runs are special. So I take it a step further with you, Doc, to get to a blue blood status for Iowa women's basketball. There was an Elite Eight right before Caitlin got there. Obviously, the back-to-back Final Fours. When you look at what Jan Jensen has in front of her, what's a realistic goal? What's a realistic kind of end game when you look at the program over the next 8 to 10 years?
Jeez. I think they're recruiting at a very high level. Majority of their players are top 100 players.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at coming in next year with Addie Deal and Layla Hayes and some really good players. Why wouldn't they be able to at least get to a Final Four with that kind of recruiting prowess? I think that's something that's realistic. It's not realistic to expect another Caitlin Clark to walk in the door because you're never going to have that again.
Right.
She is a one of one,
yep.
In every single facet on the floor, off the floor. But I think when you look at Iowa's program and you look at the teams that have been there, UCLA has really no history whatsoever. They have an incredible post. If they didn't have Lauren Betts, they wouldn't have been there either. I think if you're Iowa and if you're able to put together a roster that's capable and you have a little bit better team than you did this year, I think Iowa's more than capable of getting to the Sweet 16 with regularity, maybe 3 or 4 times every 10 years and pushing through and getting to a Final Four maybe once or twice over that period if they've got the team to do it.
Doc, I guess your thoughts on Ben McCollum. The McCollum era is underway. We don't know what the class is going to look like. A lot of guys following him from Drake, really good players at Drake. What's your thoughts on the start of the McCollum era and what lies ahead?
It's so early right now to really predict what can or can't happen in the next in this first year and beyond. I mean, I think what we would say is he's brought a lot of his players to form a foundation of what he wants at Iowa, and I think he's taken the best available Drake players with him. Bennett Sturts, of course, is one of the best players in the country, regardless of division and level of play. So I think that's exciting. Not being able to get a Josh Dix or pay for a Josh Dix or Pryce Sandfort is probably something that, you think about. It doesn't mean that it's a negative or anything. It's just the way the world works. But, I'm probably more interested than anything to see how is it going to go going forward, which players he gets that aren't connected to Drake or any of the schools that he's worked on. And I think that's really going to be the determining factor as to whether this team is competitive in the Big Ten or it's where it ended up under Fran McCaffrey this year, which was, below Fran's standard and kind of languishing and, barely trying to get into the Big Ten tournament.
So as we wait for everything to be handed down with the case from up above in the government with college athletics, when you look at Iowa, the way that they're going to structure things with $20.5 million, do you have a rough estimate of the way football will be fully funded? We get all that, but the rest of the sports, what they plan to do with that? Men's basketball, they need a bigger slice of the pie. Women's basketball, not down of that 20.5. How would you structure it, and how do you believe they will?
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with Beth and other people about how this is going to work, and they're pretty evasive. And I think in some ways it's kind of structured around time. But I think the interesting factor for Iowa and other schools like Iowa is you can't feed everybody the same. And for Iowa, there are four sports that stand out, and it always has been. Football is number one. You could put 2 and 3 blank, but it is the most important sport at Iowa, no question. I think men's basketball is probably going to get the second biggest share because it is the only other profitable program, even though that profit has been way down in the last few years. Women's basketball competes at a high level, and it's high visibility. It was second in attendance this year. It was second attendance last year. And you get top 100 players, you've got to have the money to be able to compete. And then wrestling as well is obviously very important. And there are some outside interests there that can help them from a collective standpoint. But then the other ones are going to be really fascinating to watch. What do you do with baseball, volleyball, softball, track, and the other sports, and how much do they get, and what are you willing to concede as a program? I think you look at like Iowa and Wisconsin, for instance. Wisconsin is an elite program in volleyball and a bottom feeder in basketball. They've lost to Iowa 31 straight times in women's basketball. Does it make sense for them to take money away from volleyball and apply it to women's basketball just so they could be a mediocre program in the Big Ten? Or do they just say, you know what, we compete for championships in volleyball, let's stick with that? And likewise with Iowa, it's the same deal in the flip, which is you compete for Big Ten championships in women's basketball, but in volleyball, you just can't get off the ground. Do you really want to take money from what could be one good player on your women's team to help you reach the Sweet 16 just so you can be slightly more competitive in volleyball? Those are going to be the fun or entertaining, let's say, for us, and for them it's going to be rip their hair out of their head. but and it's like that with everywhere. Ice hockey at Minnesota, women's volleyball at Nebraska. Everybody's having the same discussion on how you're going to slice that pie.
Doc, we saw I'm going to switch to football with you here. We saw Dion in Colorado. They wanted to bring in another school and practice against them, and don't necessarily call it a spring game, but kind of like a game, right, in April. And the NCAA shot it down. They want to do more due diligence on the matter. Do we get to that point, Doc? Is that something that, we could see? ESPN2 had already committed. They were going to televise the affair. Is there an appetite for that? And do you think we'll ever get to a point where we see that?
Yeah, absolutely will. I don't know. I think you can expand upon that and look into August. I think that's probably where it's more ripe. And the oversight committee meets again on Thursday, and they really didn't shoot it down as much as they just put the brakes on it and said, hey, it's too late in the process to go through with something like this. It's a recruiting disadvantage for the other schools because, all the eyes will be on this as opposed to anything else. And I kind of wonder in the April, March life of spring football, can schools do that when you've got so many different moving pieces, the portal and, injuries, there's still players recovering from surgeries. I'm not sure exactly what will happen there, but I think when you start to look at August, I think that is ripe territory. When you think about, let's go regional here. What if Minnesota and Iowa State decided let's have a couple of joint team practices and then play a game, either in Gopherland or at Jack Trice, and get together and you get 30,000 people there, and that's a heck of a game day. That's a heck of a check. That's
split the pot.
Maybe it ends up, it ends up on BTN. It ends up on something else. But then you start thinking, well, maybe for an Iowa, you do that against Northern Iowa, but then it opens up your schedule to play an SEC team in the regular season, because then you already have your seventh date, or you go to a neutral site in Chicago and play Notre Dame. I mean, I think that is the right territory. I think spring is going to be hit and miss for teams because there's sometimes that you only have 35, 40 players. And, I don't know if you want to play a game. Can't even play team games, scrimmages against each other, let alone somebody else.
Has that August seen a theory idea? Has that seen the light of day, Doc? Is that just you? And if so, would you kind of get that out there? Because that makes a ton of sense to me.
I tell you what, I wrote about it. It's now in the editor's hands.
Yeah.
So
is it?
I do,
okay.
Yeah, so let's see. I do have some people quoted.
Yeah.
I can't give away too much here. But,
awesome.
But I will say that people are discussing it.
This is why Trent and I both subscribe to The Athletic. One of the many reasons we should say.
And that is why Doc's face is right at the top of my list of articles, even in front of the.
And by the way, congratulations on re-upping with The Athletic. That was good news for us, Doc.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yep. It's been fun working for The Athletic, and hopefully I can continue to do a good enough job where they appreciate me, want to keep me around.
You are a national writer now, but of course, still keeping your eye on all things Iowa football. There was open availability. Got to see some stretching for 20 minutes and a couple of plays on Thursday. Doc, what remains the biggest spring question that needs to be answered for Iowa football for you before the new portal window opens for football? What's the biggest question still out there?
I guess that, there are a couple that. One is, I think more than any of them, personnel-wise, there's one on each side of the ball that I think has to be answered this spring. One is left tackle. Do you have a left tackle you can win big games with? And if they think Jack Dochterman can do that and do that job, or Trevor Lauk, whoever comes out of that, then go for it. Push it through. If you don't, then go out and get somebody. And then likewise, I think at corner, we saw a lot of inconsistency last year. I think they have some talent there with TJ Hall and with Deshaun Lee, but do they feel like they can win games and beat Oregon and Penn State with them? If they don't, then go out and get a guy. And that, to me, those are the two biggest question marks I have personnel-wise on Iowa's roster. And because I do think that they finally have really upgraded at quarterback. I think Mark Granowski is going to be a terrific quarterback. I think they've got the semblance of a really good offensive line. I think the receiving core is, inexperienced and modest, but actually getting better. And I like their tight ends and their running backs. So offensively, I think they're going to be much improved. Defensively, they've got some, you've got to grow your depth at linebacker and defensive line, but I think they're okay there. It's just, do they have a winning corner, and do they have a winning left tackle based on their guys? If they do, then this team's going to be very competitive in most of its games. If they don't, then they're going to either have to go get a guy or lose some games that they're not going to want to lose.
Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Doc, hope your editor clears that one and gets published at The Athletic in the next couple of days. Good stuff. Can't wait to read it. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Doc, we'll speak with you next week. Have a wonderful week, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Good.
Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. So much going on. I got young kids. I got a wife that seems like she's always shopping online. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start actually building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, we're just realizing how much we were spending on that online shopping. Now we can budget smarter and save more, and all in one place. Instead of juggling a bunch of apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. As a small business owner, that is something multiple accounts can be a little bit tricky. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page like I do without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarch Money online, monarchmoney.com. Trent Condon back with you one final time, Locked On Hawkeyes. So, mentioned I was in Iowa City over the weekend. Always great to be back in Iowa City, and took in my first Iowa softball game in 26 years. And am I getting old? For the first time since my freshman season, went out and watched a softball game, took my daughter, and took the family over to Iowa City. Had a change in the schedule. It was chilly on Saturday, but got over there. Wasn't too bad in the stadium. It was packed, though. Absolutely shocked. I mean, that thing was plenty of Nebraska fans that were there also, but for a cold, windy day, a lot of people there. Now, Nebraska made quick work of the Hawkeyes because of that and the wind blowing out as they were just crushing the ball. I believe they finished the game 5 home runs, something like that. They were just getting it up into the jet stream and finishing it off. But Iowa comes back on Sunday, gets the victory against the top 25 ranked Huskers, and another ranked win for Iowa softball. So they're 22-14 on the year, 4-6 in the Big Ten. Still work that needs to be done, but with an RPI in the top 50, Iowa still got a chance. So the top 12 teams this year, this is what they're going to do. With 17 teams in the Big Ten for softball, they're going to qualify 12 of the teams for the Big Ten softball tournament. You finish in the top 12, you're in. And there's not a whole lot of advantage. Yeah, the top 4 teams are going to get a bye to the quarterfinals, but this is single elimination. So you got to be ready to go from this jump. I was in really good shape, not only to make the tournament, because you look at what they have going forward. Maryland is their next series coming up this weekend. They go on the road to Maryland, who's 15-22 on the year. That is Penn State back at home. Nittany Lions, 500, 18-18, an RPI of 88. Michigan State is their third series remaining in the Big Ten. Their RPI is 170th, and then they wrap up against Rutgers, who's 169th. Iowa has a lot of very winnable games here in the Big Ten down the stretch to solidify themselves as in the Big Ten tournament, but maybe more importantly, put them in a position to go on a little bit of a run and build themselves an NCAA tournament resume. Look, if you're around, you remember the days of the late 90s and early 2000s when Gail Blevins had that program running at just an incredible level. You remember what Iowa softball was. And to get back there, still a lot of work. There is great talent, though, in this state. People that know the sport well will tell you it's been disappointing to see a lot of that talent leave the state. A lot of that talent then show up at Iowa State, and Drake and you and I and Iowa State in particular have had some good programs here recently, and getting Iowa back into that factor. Now, Iowa's back in a big-time way in the Big Ten, though they let one slip away against Northwestern, couldn't complete the sweep. Yet, the Hawkeyes still sit in first place. So now 15 games into the schedule, 12-3 on the year. They're 18-10 overall. Have lost Northwestern, not great. And their RPI does sit at 78. But Iowa in great position themselves to be in the Big Ten tournament. Now, their schedule looks a whole lot different than the softball team's schedule down the stretch, as they will wrap up the season against Oregon, He's ranked in the top 25. Before that, they have a neutral site series at Principal Park, the Iowa Cubs Stadium in Des Moines, against 9th-ranked Oregon State. Before that, they go to Washington. That's at the beginning of May. Coming up this month, they take on Nebraska this weekend. Though Nebraska's down, still Nebraska. It's at Michigan after that, who's over 500, ranked 41 in the RPI, and then against Indiana before that Washington series. So going to be much more difficult for Iowa, but still in first place. Rick Heller doing it again with the baseball program. Transfer portal here, we got you covered. Spring football here, we got you covered. Ton to talk about here this week on Locked On Hawkeyes, and we're with you each and every day. Your team every day. That's what we do on the Locked On Network. Whatever your team is, your favorite NFL team, MLB team, NHL, NBA, with the playoffs right around the corner, all right here on the Locked On Network. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.